Free will versus determinism. Do we have power over our actions, or is choice an illusion? This debate has raged for thousands of years because of the radical implications it has for our world. For example, our morality. Many believe we can only hold people accountable for their actions if we have free will. After all, how can you blame someone for doing what they were programmed to do, like a computer? We also have a personal stake. People don't like the idea that we aren't in control of our actions. And if choices are decided before we are born, then why do they matter? For these reasons, many reject determinism and believe in free will. But what if I told you free will doesn't matter at all? Hi, welcome to Film Philosophy. Today we'll use the film The Minority Report to explore why free will matters less than you think it does. Spoilers ahead, and I recommend you watch the film before this video. Before I recap The Minority Report, I'll be taking some liberties with the plot of the film by pulling from the original novella by Philip K. Dick to make for a better philosophical thought experiment. With that in mind, let's recap the story. In the future, special pre-crime police units are able to predict and arrest criminals who will commit murders in the future. Already, this is morally controversial. It's doubtful whether or not we could or should predict complex human behavior, as if it's just the weather report. But according to many determinists, it's only a matter of time before we can. For example, in high school physics class, you may have done a simple experiment where you dropped a ball from a known height and predicted how much time it would take to reach the ground. Given you know how the ball will behave, such as the rate of acceleration of gravity and the distance between the dropping point and the ground, you could predict with perfect accuracy how long it would take. In other words, to know that something will happen is also to say that it's determined to happen that way. If you know the inputs, you know the outputs. And are humans any different? Our environment, upbringing, and biology are all causes to who we are and what we choose. If we understood what makes people tick, we could infer their behavior. The only difference is, people are fantastically complex, and humans are nowhere near understood well enough to predict a complicated behavior, like choosing to murder someone. On the other hand, proponents of free will claim it's exactly this inability to predict human behavior that proves the truth of free will. That the mysterious X factor in our minds preventing us from being calculated like a physics experiment is the power to choose within us. Despite the forces that shape us, people have the ultimate say over their choices, and they cannot be known or predicted. So, back to the Minority Report. We follow Agent John Anderton, a pre-crime detective who has full faith in the pre-crime system because many years ago, his son was murdered and the killer ran free, which serves as his motivation to prevent others from going through what he did. One day, John Anderton receives a prediction that he himself will commit a murder next week. Initially in disbelief and knowing he isn't a killer, he tries to disprove his supposed destiny. But when he uncovers the identity of the man he is set to murder, who is the killer of his son many years ago, he realizes that he does, in fact, want to murder this person, and must choose between doing what he wants and proving the self-fulfilling prophecy. It's this dilemma I'd like to focus on. Like Anderton, we're afraid of how determinism, if true, affects our choices. What if you wanted to do something, but you knew that desire was determined? John, despite his genuine want to kill this person, thinks twice, wanting to rebel against the forces that drove him there. But let's assume for a moment things had happened differently. What if there was no prediction that John would kill this person? What if he had free will? This victim is still the killer of John's child, and he still has the desire to avenge his son. So, in both worlds, he wants the same thing, free will or not. John realizes it doesn't matter if he was determined or not. He decides to avenge his son and fulfills the pre-crime's prediction. He had been trying so hard to prove determinism wrong and exercise his free will that he lost sight of what he actually wanted to do. Why should it matter if John is determined, and why should he let determinism get in the way of his true desires? John is what we call in philosophy a compatibilist, which is the third position in the free will debate. And although you've probably never heard of it, it's actually, by far, the most popular view among philosophers. Compatibilism is the seemingly contradictory idea that we are both free and determined at the same time. That our will may be shaped by forces we have no control over, but our freedom is our ability to pursue those desires, despite them being determined. Here's another example to help explain. People like to eat sweet and sugary foods, but we don't have any control over this desire. Humans are biologically programmed to enjoy sweet foods for survival and evolutionary reasons. We might have some control over our taste palette, but largely, we're born this way. It's out of our control what kinds of food we like. We are determined, and yet we are still free to fulfill those desires and enjoy eating sweet things. If there's a slice of cake you want to enjoy, for example, do you eat it? Or do you reject the cake to fight back against the biological forces that created that desire? No, if you want to eat it, you do, and you are free to do so, despite being determined. It doesn't matter. See, sometimes we like to think about determinism like a character in a video game. Maybe the character in the game wants to do something, go somewhere, and an invisible wall designed by the creators of the game prevents you from doing so. But in reality, this isn't how choice or determinism works. There is no invisible hand restricting what you can or can't do. But what about morality? Under compatibilism, you are judged for the desires you pursue. You may not be at fault for having an evil desire, but you are for chasing it. Our will and desire may or may not be determined, and yet we're free to do what we want. This is the fundamental truth John Anderton realizes about free will. We may not have ultimate control over our desires and decisions, and yet the desires we were molded to have before we were born, we are free to pursue. We're so caught up with the idea that we are controlled by things we have no power over that we forget that we can do whatever we want to. And this obsession with free will, ironically, may be the very thing constricting you from your true desires. And this is the freedom that compatibilism offers. At the end of the day, you have the power to do what you want. And if that isn't all you could want from free will, what is? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content like this, and let me know what you think about free will, or what kinds of videos you'd like to see next in the comments below.